again, we introduced narrative reviews, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis. And in the last week, we went through how to start thinking about writing your systematic review. So first of all, we went through building a research question, and that's with the PICO framework. So if you remember, that would be your population, your intervention, your comparison, and your outcome. And then we went through the different study designs. So it was over here. So we had the surveys, cohort trials, clinical trials, cross-sectional, case control. And then we went through the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So establishing the PICO on what you want to include, what population to include and exclude, intervention, what drugs to include and exclude, comparison. So we talked about placebo or no drug. And then for outcomes, what kind of parameters are you measuring your outcome with? So that's what we've covered so far. And again, if you guys have any questions at this point of what we're going to cover next, you can pop it in the chat, and in between I'll stop and check if anyone has any questions. Okay, so we'll begin with search strategy next. So once you have your research question, you have your inclusion and exclusion criteria, you want to find out how am I now going to find information that is relevant to the question that I want to answer in my systematic review. And you do this by making a search strategy. So when you use a search strategy, it's basically a string of keywords that you input into the box of a search engine. But when you write a review, instead of using a search engine, you're using a database. So this is like the differences of what databases and search engines are. So databases, they are more structured and organized, and it's more academic. And that's why we prefer over search engine like Google or Bing or Ecosia, which are kind of more broad in a sense. It's not what we're looking for. And again, databases, it's curated, indexed, and it's scholarly research papers. So these would be published research, whereas search engines could be anything like videos, web pages, blogs, articles. So these are not evidence-based, and they're definitely not what we're looking for. Okay. I think there's no one asking anything. Okay, and then your searchability. So databases have more advanced search features using controlled vocabulary, Boolean operators, and filters. So I will take you through what this means. What do you mean by controlled vocabulary? What do you mean by Boolean operators? And the search features as well. And search engines, it's pretty user-friendly. You just input anything you're thinking about. It doesn't really have a structure to it. So this is like Google, and databases is something new that we're going to learn about. Okay, so famous databases, basically what researchers usually use. PubMed, this is definitely something that's the most popular one, and I love PubMed because it's so straightforward, and I'll give you guys an example later on. Embase is another one, similarly, Lilac, Cochrane Library, Web of Science, and Scopus. And I think these are underlined because it's not free to use for everyone. And I think you need like institutional access in order to access them, or you have to pay for them. Whereas these are free. And PubMed is the best in my opinion. It's very easy to use. Alright, so let's take you through Boolean operation. So Boolean operation is kind of like a rule on how you're going to input your keywords. So there are three that are the main Boolean operators, and one of them is the word and. So if you search for diabetes and exercise, for example, they will retrieve articles that contain both the term diabetes and exercise. So if a paper has diabetes without exercise, it will not come up in your database search. And if it has exercise but not diabetes, it will also not come up on your database search. It will only come up if it has both diabetes and exercise. So this is pretty straightforward. Okay, and then we have or. So For example, you use hypertension or high blood pressure, but for this one, you'd actually need to put a bracket so that the database would know that this is one singular term and it needs to be high blood pressure. So if you search hypertension or high blood pressure, the paper that you get, it may have hypertension and not have high blood pressure, but it will pop up because any of the two keywords, if it's in the article, it will pop up in your database search. So that's what or means. Like any of the two, you can even do three, any of the three, say hypertension or high blood pressure or I don't know, like high intraocular pressure, like any of the three, and it will come up on your search. Okay, and the last one, this is not as commonly used, but it's something nice to be aware of. So not means, again, you should put the bracket preferably so that they would know that the database would know that it's a singular term. So smoking, not lung cancer. So if your article has the word smoking in it, and it has the phrase lung cancer in it as well, then the article will not come up on your search. It will only come up if it has smoking. And if it has smoking and lung cancer, it will not come up. So that's what not does for you on your search. Okay, and then we move on to controlled vocabulary. So that was pretty straightforward, Boolean operation. For controlled vocabulary, we have our standardized terminology. So controlled vocabulary establishes a standardized set of terms to describe concepts, topics, or subjects within a specific field. This helps eliminate the variability and ambiguity that may arise from using different terms to refer to the same concept. So it's a long string of explanation, but basically when you're describing a disease, there's always, oh, this is the name of the disease, but it's also known as blah, 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 also known as blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of different phrases that may describe the same thing. And what's nice is that, there are terminology that are standardized so that the database, when they see that you type a certain phrase, they will like, oh, I know what this person is looking for. There's something called the mesh terms that basically standardizes the terminology. And I'll also take you through that. After we go through the search strategy column, I'll give you guys like an example so that it's easier to put what we've learned into practice. Okay, so, and then we have enhanced precision in searching. Using controlled vocabulary ensures precision in information retrieval. When researchers information using standardized terms, they can retrieve more relevant and specific results, reducing the chances of missing relevant studies. So again, it's the same. So if you use the standardized terminology, you're more likely to have a more precise search. Minimization of synonym issues. Synonyms and variations in terminology can pose challenges in information retrieval. Controlled vocabulary minimizes this issue by assigning a single preferred term to represent a specific concept. Users searching with different terms will be directed to the same set of relevant results. So again, this is like what I mentioned about the mesh terms. So these databases, they know if you use a certain term, they know specifically what you're looking for. And I'll give you guys an example afterwards as well. Okay, facilitation of advanced searching. Controlled vocabulary facilitates advanced search strategies. Users can employ Boolean operators, so like what we went through, the and, or, and not, and combine terms using controlled vocabulary to create complex and precise search queries. This is particularly valuable in databases where advanced search capabilities enhance search efficiency. So again, using your Boolean operator, using your controlled vocabulary, you get a more advanced search capability and you get search efficiency. Consistent indexing and categorization. So this is pretty much the same thing. So controlled vocabulary, it's like a term for explaining what a disease is, like identifying a disease. So these databases, they're able to categorize each article into the disease that they're talking about. Okay. And then, so controlled vocabulary ensures consistent indexing and categorization of articles or resources within a database. So indexers use predefined terms to tag articles, ensuring uniformity in how content is organized and allowing for systematic organization. So again, the MASH terms, I will show you guys after this. And then improved recall and retrieval. Controlled vocabulary contributes to improved recall, ensuring that relevant studies are not overlooked. By using a standardized set of terms, MASH terms, researchers can cast a wider net and capture relevant articles that might be indexed under different but equivalent terms. So this is just like what we're talking about with the variability earlier. So database knows that you're talking about the same thing if you're using different terms, but then it's good to use the MASH terms because it's what the database itself will use. Okay, and then integration with thesauri. Controlled vocabulary is often linked with thesauri, which provides hierarchical relationships and broader or narrower term associations. This helps users explore related concepts and navigate the database more effectively. So this is again explaining about the same function of controlled vocabulary, where they would know that this term is associated with each other, and the database will be able to pull articles that are relevant to what you're looking for more effectively. And next, support for subject specialists. Subject specialists such as librarians or information professionals can play a role in developing and maintaining controlled vocabulary. This ensures that the terminology used aligns with the current best practices and evolving understandings within a specific field. So, again, as the controlled vocabulary, it can be influenced by librarians and information professionals. So you have to make sure that it aligns with current best practices and evolving understandings. So if I'm not mistaken, in the UK, for example, you used to use the word blind for people who can't see very well, but I think recently they've changed the term for severely visually impaired. So it's good to keep on top of these things because sometimes the terms that are used change depending on the social context over time. So that's what this means. Facilitation of interdisciplinary research. In interdisciplinary research, where terminology may vary across disciplines, controlled vocabulary help bridge language gaps. Researchers from different fields can use standardized terms to access relevant literature beyond their immediate areas of expertise. So if someone's not doing medicine, for example, and they don't know that different terminologies could be talking about the same thing, then these controlled vocabulary is going to help them. So let's say if we're talking about C1 or C2 cervical vertebrae, it could be called the atlas or the axis, and they may not know this. So this is why controlled vocabulary is very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys an example since we've gone through the search strategy. I believe we have it over on this side. Okay, so this is like an example of a study that you could do for you to understand. Right, so you can go through from the top. It's kind of like a recap as well as how to use the search strategy. But perhaps I can show you how PubMed looks like first. Okay, I think for those of you who are here for the first session, I did show you how PubMed works. Just looking at the chat if there's any questions so far. Not sure why this is not working. I'll go on here. Hi Jocelyn, can't see the... Okay. Can't hear. Hamel, can you hear me now? Okay, that's good. Joined now because of network issue. Okay, great that you're here. Welcome. Can you use the same search strategy for Google Scholar? So, yes, you can, although Google Scholar is not really recommended for systematic review because it's not really like, I wouldn't say it's medicine focused in a way. Google Scholar kind of includes a lot of different types of articles, and also if you guys know, okay, I don't know if you guys know how journals work, but I'll just give you a brief run through. So when you have an article that you've written and you want to get it published, you send it off to a journal, and then the journal chooses whether or not to accept your article. If they accept your article, then they will publish it. And when they publish it, it will definitely pop up on Google and Google Scholar. So Google Scholar has literally, it includes everything. However, this journal, they may not pop up in some databases. So for example, PubMed, they are quite picky about which journals they let into their database search. So there are some journals, if they have a low impact factor, they will appear on Google Scholar, but they may not appear on PubMed. So if you have a PubMed indexed article, that means your article has been published in a journal that is good enough to be in PubMed, and that's something to be proud of. And I think that's why we don't normally use Google Scholar for our search strategy. We usually use PubMed, Cochrane, what was listed just now, like Lilac, Web of Science, Ambis, because they have like a certain standard of journal that is required before they're being indexed in your database. Is the Scopus Index journal not gonna... A Scopus Index journal is pretty good, I would say. I think... Yeah, but that's why you preferably don't use Google Scholar for systematic review. You can use it for narrative, because again, narrative doesn't have like a specific guideline, but for systematic, the key is to be more robust. You don't want to introduce bias, and that's why you don't really use Google Scholar for that. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. So you can, but preferably try not to. Right, so Baba asked, did you say we should preferentially use visually impaired instead of blind? So, and we would be better if we use blind and we... Okay, so for your question, it depends on the country. I think in most countries, they still say legally blind, but I think in the UK, they didn't want to use the word blind because they think it's too strong of a word. So they decided, oh, you should say severely visually impaired instead, in the UK at least. I don't know if most people have adapted to that, but I know that that's what they decided to do recently in the UK. I don't think the other countries have done that. I think Europe in general still use blindness. Yeah. It's a Scopus Index article journal Logan. Okay, I've answered that as well. Okay, so we can continue. Alright, I will check back later as well. Right. So again, PubMed, Embase, Lilac, Cochrane Library, Web of Science, and Scopus. So these are famous databases, meaning a lot of people use these. So I would say they're pretty trustworthy to use. Okay, so PubMed here. Let's say we want to look at diabetes and hypertension. So all of these, as you can see, they will have both the words that hypertension and diabetes in all of the articles. And that's how it works. This is Boolean operation. If you use diabetes or hypertension, these have both of them as well, but you can also have some that are only one or the other. I think these are just really, really popular phrases that you have together, so they're going to have it. Maybe diabetes or cancer. Perhaps we'll have one without the other. Like this, for example, it doesn't have cancer in it, it's just diabetes, but it's because you use or, so if it has diabetes only, it's going to pop up. And I think you can see that pretty easily, because if you choose diabetes or hypertension, you have 23,000 articles that have either diabetes or cancer. But if you use diabetes and cancer, there's only 2,000 articles with both terms in it. So you can tell it's more specific. And diabetes. Oh, sorry. Diabetes, not cancer. Again, as you can see here, this means diabetes only without the word cancer in it, and that's 15,000. And if you look at the advanced search, so the advanced search, it gives you more ability to kind of manipulate the terms that you want to put in and look at what you're searching for. So if you put diabetes and hypertension again, so all fields means that everything that's on the page, you look for it. And if you only want to look for these words on the title only, you can also pick that. And you can just pick title. So if they have diabetes and hypertension in your in the article, then it will come up. But if, let's say, it has diabetes on the title and hypertension on the abstract and not the title, then it will not come up. So that's what it looks like. You just click add there, and then it'll come up on your query box. Just press search, and that is your result. So this is like a more specific way of searching it, but I think most people don't really use that, but you can use that function if you'd like. This is just to show you guys like the variability of what you can do. And what's great, I think I've showed you guys this before, you can also choose what type of articles you want to look at, and there's even more types too that you can choose. So as you can see here, a lot of different types that you can choose from. Okay, and you can also choose the publication date, so this would be really useful for the time range. If you want to only look at the last 10 years, the last 5 years, you can just press it here. And as you can see, in the last 10 years, there are only 124 results. So yeah, it's very, very easy to use that way. That's your database. I was going to take you guys through mesh terms. Okay, so controlled vocabulary, mesh terms is a good example. Let's say we want to talk about diabetes. So you search the word diabetes. And as you can see here, there's many things that diabetes could mean. And so mesh terms, it helps you narrow down what exactly you're talking about, so that you can tell the database what exactly you're looking for, and the database can give you exactly the articles that you're looking for. So currently, if I type diabetes only, this is what the database is searching for. It's searching for diabetes mellitus, diabetes insipidus, or just diabetes in the text of the word itself. So when you see mesh terms, when an article is published in PubMed, they input the keywords that this article can be searched up with. So when they say this mesh terms, that means any article that has been tagged with this keyword is going to pop up, and this one as well. And when they say text word, that means any article that has the word diabetes in it. So this doesn't have to do with the tagging or categorization that we talked about just now with controlled vocabulary. Okay, so diabetes, we're talking about diabetes mellitus, not diabetes insipidus. So we're going to click on this. And let's say, oh yeah, I want to include diabetic ketoacidosis specifically. And I want to include everything in diabetic ketoacidosis. So you click add to search builder. And that's your mesh term. So you just have to copy this over and then put it over here. and then you click search. And this is for the last 10 years, and this is your result on diabetic ketoacidosis. So again, MeSH terms is pretty much controlled vocabulary. I think it's specifically for PubMed. Yeah, so as you can see here, the MeSH terms. Okay. Alright, so I think this is a good time to take you guys through a mock review, because we've learned a lot of things and they may be a lot to take in. So I think it's good for us to go through an example to apply what we've learned. Okay, and before that, let me check the chat. Please, can you run through it, please? I get a bit confused, the MeSH terms thing. Oh, you mean okay, yeah, I can re-explain it again. Sure. Slightly going off topic, but how exactly do you choose a journal to publish your paper? Which index journal is better, and how do you decide that? So, many people like to go with this thing called the impact factor. So the higher the higher the impact factor a journal has, the higher impact it has, meaning in a way it's a better journal to publish with. So that's a good rule of thumb, but I think even a journal with impact factor of 0.9 or 0.8 can already be PubMed indexed. So yeah, and I would say it's not that easy to get your article published in a PubMed index journal. So yeah, I hope that helps you. So impact factor is usually the main thing, but you can also search a PubMed index journal, and that should give you a good rule of thumb of what's a good journal. And there's a lot to choose from. Right, next question, is PubMed enough to look for papers during review, or we need to look at multiple indexes simultaneously? So that's a good question. That's something I should have covered. Usually when doing a systematic review, so usually when doing a systematic review, people would go through a minimum of 3 databases. So usually that would be PubMed, Web of Science, and Scopus, or PubMed, AMBIS, and Web of Science. Yeah. But it's pretty much up to you which 3 you want to use, but PubMed is used in every single one I've seen. I think it's because it's also really easy to use and it's free to use. So a good rule of thumb is 3 databases. Does it have to be in capital, the Boolean operation? Yes, it has to be in capital. So capital and, or, and not. Please can we run through the MeSH terms? Yes, I will go through it. How is MeSH terms any different from random search on PubMed? So, when you search, let's see, I'm thinking of a disease that has...
Hey, please, I can't see your screen.
Yes. Oh yes, I'm not going through anything off screen. Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thinking of what? I'm thinking of a term. There's like... I'm not getting anything in my head now. Let's see, maybe on syndrome, for example. Right, so for example, someone's question, which question was that? How is MeSH terms any different from any random search on PubMed? Okay, so if you're investigating about Conn's syndrome, for example, Conn's syndrome, and you put the words Conn's syndrome on PubMed, PubMed will give you the results of articles with the words Conn's syndrome on it. So if a paper does not use the term Conn's syndrome, but it uses the word primary aldosteronism, it will not come up in your search, which is what you don't want. You want to have every article that talks about Conn's syndrome, also known as primary aldosteronism, right? So if I can show you guys, maybe I can draw on Google Slides and maybe hopefully it'll be more obvious. Okay. So, can I draw on here? Insert tools. Oh no, how can I draw? Maybe I can do a shape. Insert shape. Okay, I'll give you a circle. So, let's say this is the disease that you're investigating, and it can be called Conn's syndrome. It can be called primary aldosteronism, but it's talking about the same thing. It's talking about this circle. And then, in some articles, they decided to call it primary aldosteronism. So let's say this part on the left is the articles that use the term primary aldosteronism, but then they don't use the term Conn's syndrome. So it's only primary aldosteronism. So I'll write that here. Primary aldosteronism. Yeah. And then on this part on the right, these are the articles that use the word Conn's syndrome. Right? So if you put into your PubMed search, you put Conn's syndrome, the PubMed will only give you this number of articles. But you want everything that's in this disease, because you're talking about the same disease, they just call it different things. So you want to look at everything here. But if you only write this is what PubMed will give you. So what's nice is if you go to the MeSH terms like I showed you just now here, and then you look at Conn's syndrome. There. You look at Conn's syndrome, and then you have it here. So what this means that if you use this MeSH terms, because this is generated by the website itself, if you use this term, you just copy and paste it into your search. Then this PubMed, they're going to know with this, they're going to know that you're talking about all of this at the same time. No matter what it's called, they know it's the same disease that you're looking for. So as you can see here, this one says primary aldosteronism. It means the same thing as hyperaldosteronism, but it doesn't have this word on it. But PubMed knows that you're looking for this. And I hope that answers your question on why MeSH terms could be better in a way. Because it's putting in, they know like what disease you're looking for, and you don't have to know every single term that it's also known as. And I hope that answers your question. So basically, because we've put in Conn's syndrome, and this is the MeSH term for it. So this MeSH term is going to include everything of the disease itself. Do you mean that MeSH terms are basically used for synonymous terms? Yes, exactly. So there's a lot of different synonymous terms. So that's what we're talking about with the variations. It's controlled vocabulary, it's talking about the same thing, but there's many synonymous terms. A lot of people use different words to describe the same thing. So what's nice is you write down what you know the term as on here. Like I wrote Conn's syndrome, that's what I know it as, and PubMed is like, okay, this is what you're talking about, exactly what I'm talking about, and then, oops.
Black set there.
So PubMed knows exactly what I'm talking about, and it gives me the term that I should put into the text box for me to look for this disease. So that's why it's very, very useful. So what's the difference between AND Boolean operation and mesh terms? Because I can search primary. Yes, that's a good question. But the thing is, okay, so I'm going to answer your second question first. I can search primary aldosteronism and Conn syndrome, which would eventually yield the same result, right? So if this disease only has these two keywords that are tied to it, then you are correct. Then it will be exactly the same thing. If you type in this into the search box, or if you type in primary aldosteronism and Conn syndrome, then theoretically it should yield you with the same results. But as you can see here itself, these two terms can also be called another thing, hyperaldosteronism. So actually, it's not just these two anymore. You have another term that you're looking at. So I actually need to add another line here to divide this circle from here to, let's say, here. So there's your Conn syndrome, and actually you're going to have another hyperaldosteronism. So if you can say, okay, now I can just add and hyperaldosteronism in here. Yes, you can. If these are the three terms that this mesh term encompasses, then yes, if you put this into the search builder, you're going to get the same result. But what if there's more of these terms that mean the same thing and we just don't know it off the top of our heads? Then we would have to add and those terms. So this is the best way to go ahead, because you'll be like, oh yeah, I want to look at this disease, and then you just go to the mesh terms and it'll pop up with what exactly you need to search for, and it'll cover everything, and you don't need to wonder, did I miss out any other synonyms? So basically, for a number of variables, mesh terms is appropriate. Exactly. And the word and is usually used not for synonyms, but for different kind of parameters. So for example, if you're looking at diabetes and hypertension, then you would use the Boolean operation AND to include the two different terms together. So that's what AND is usually used for. Okay, so I hope that answers your question as well. Let's see, there's my other questions. And Baba, I hope that answers your question about the mesh terms thing as well. If you have any more questions, please type it in the chat, or you can take your time drafting something up and you can send it to me on WhatsApp as well. And I hope that answers Priyan as well. How is mesh terms any different from random search? Sri asks, when we are already having advanced search, how will the mesh terms help us? So again, mesh terms, it's including like synonyms together. Advanced search is slightly different. So if you click advanced here, oops, where is the term that we were doing? Right, so this is the term. So when we click advanced search here, we click mesh terms here. Oh no, it doesn't work like that. Sorry. Okay, so mesh terms, it doesn't work like that, I'm sorry, because mesh terms, every article that's published on PubMed is tagged with a mesh term. So if you publish an article talking about primary aldosteronism and you publish it and PubMed indexes it, PubMed will immediately tag your article with this term. So anyone who inputs this, they're going to pop up with your article. So your article doesn't even need to have the word hyperaldosteronism on it, because PubMed knows, oh, this is the same thing, so we're going to put this into whoever puts that into the search box. But what advanced search does, advanced search is a little bit different, where Okay, so just now I couldn't put this into the advanced search box because any article that has been tagged with this MASH term will come up. But the function of this box is to search like a phrase itself, like the text itself. So it doesn't have anything to do with being tagged, like an article being tagged with a MASH term. So this is more to do with if the article has that keyword in it. So this is basically like the usual Google search. So I click diabetes. So I want to see if in my search diabetes is in the title. So if there's diabetes in the title, it will come up. So this doesn't have anything to do with tagging at all. Tagging is something that's unique to this database. Yeah, so this one is more like Google search. Basically, you write diabetes, you want where do you want diabetes in. Usually we put all fields. So if there's diabetes in the title or the abstract or the author affiliation, such as Center of Diabetes, it will pop up. So yeah, this is more like kind of Google search kind of function. Yeah. And I hope that answers your question as well for Sri. So MASH terms is great if you're looking at synonyms. Yeah. So if I want to look at hyperaldosteronism, the tagging one, and I also want to have diabetes in articles that are tagged by this MASH term. So in this, all of them that are tagged, I want them to have the word diabetes in it. Then you go to advanced search, you put this MASH term in it, you put diabetes on it, and so that's what you get. Or you don't actually need advanced search builder if you already know how to build a search strategy. So again, just like how this disease has MASH terms, diabetes will also have MASH terms. So if I want to add it with diabetes, I want to look at this hyperaldosteronism and diabetes mellitus. I write diabetes, I click diabetes, and nothing, this is not it. And then I add it to search builder. So this is exactly what I'm looking at, and this definition is what I'm looking for. And then I click add to the search builder just now, so usually it's empty. I click add to search builder. This is the term that I want. Copy it, come here. This is what we got just now. Use our Boolean operation, and then I paste it. Diabetes mellitus. So now every article that's tagged with both this term and this term will come up. So I click search, and as you can see here, we only have 57 results in the last 10 years. So that's an example of how you use both MASH terms and Boolean operation at the same time. Does that mean PubMed index journals are over other index journals? Not necessarily. I just said PubMed index is like a good rule of thumb to tell whether or not a journal is good. But generally, impact factor is usually what people look at. They don't usually ask, oh, is your article PubMed index? People usually look at impact factor more. So you can use Boolean operation and for it too, right? Just mentioned. Oh, I think someone asked the same question just now. And I hope I explained your question just now already about that one. We can use or. Yep. Because I search. Yep. Okay. Alright. Thank you so much. Very well explained. Great. Thank you. Yes, I'll do that. I'll practice and revert to you. Thank you. Okay, great. Sri asks, what if we have to combine two different MASH terms for searching that article? So this is exactly how you do it. So as you can see just now, I looked for Crohn's, I looked for diabetes, and then I just put N in between. And you just have to click search, and you get your results. So I can take you through that again because it's super quick. So again, I was looking at Crohn's syndrome. Crohn's syndrome. And pop-in will be, oh, is this what you're looking for? Yes, exactly. So I'm going to click add to the search builder. I will cut this and I will paste it into the search box. And I will look at diabetes now. So I search diabetes. And I want to look at diabetes mellitus. And this is the explanation. It's exactly what I'm looking for. Add to the search builder. Put it. And I want this and this. So I paste it here. And then I search it. And that's your result. So it's pretty straightforward. So that's how you combine two match terms. Okay, are match terms specific for only PubMed index journals? From my experience, yes. The other journals, they have their own versions, kind of. So they don't really use MASH. I'm pretty sure MASH is only for PubMed because as you can see here, it's this one, and it's the same company. Yeah. If you look at systematic reviews online, they would usually tell you what their search strategies are, and MASH only comes up for PubMed articles. The other ones, they only use the advanced search. So for the other ones, they don't have PubMed index, so they would do something like hyperaldosteronism, and they want it in the title and the abstract, so they'll do this, and then you just add it. And if I want to do, I don't know, get diabetes as well, and type in an abstract, and then you do that. Or you can add or, and you can add not, so these are the Boolean. So this is the search strategy for like other websites. They will have their own advanced search builder as well, and you just hop onto the search builder, and you can just search it through there as well. Yeah, so MASH terms I would say is more for PubMed, and I think that's why PubMed is usually the preferred database. Usually for systematic reviews, they will always use PubMed or Medline because they're the same. They're kind of the same database. Is it advisable to use MASH terms for all the words we search? It is better to use MASH terms. So I think for the mock review that we're giving an example for, as you can see here, we use MASH terms for them as well. Unless they don't exist in the MASH term, then you don't need to use it. But typically it would be good to have a search if there's a MASH term for it. If there's no MASH term, then it's okay. But it would be better to have it because it'll help you with your search better. It'll be more precise, it'll be more efficient. You will get all of the relevant articles that you want to look for. If we search for MASH terms, would there be a chance that we are missing a few articles that have other terms which are not in MASH? So it should not, because the MASH terms are invented in the first place to prevent us from accidentally excluding articles that we didn't include in our search strategy, and that's why PubMed has like tagging with MASH terms so that any article that's relevant will pop up. Because without MASH terms, you'd have to know all of the relevant things, so it shouldn't miss any articles, but maybe it would, but it shouldn't. If it does, then that's kind of PubMed's MASH terms development fault, because they didn't tag the article properly. So if you use your MASH term, you've done what you're supposed to do, and that's okay. Okay, great. So it seems like everyone understands. That's good. Okay. So I can't believe it's been an hour. I guess we can quickly run through the mock review, and then we can we can call it a day for search strategy, and next time we can come to assessment of bias. Okay, so let's just quickly run through this. This is the same thing as what we've talked about last time. So if we give an example of assessing dietary interventions in managing type 2 diabetes, again, our population is patients with type 2 diabetes, use dietary interventions, and you compare it to different dietary approaches. The outcome is reduction in HbA1c levels over 6 months in your time frame of 6 months. So this is a recap of the example that we used last time. If using MASH misses out an article, then that would be mashed up. It would be a grief mash take. That's actually a really good pun. I'm going to copy your jokes for next time. Okay, but it's good. It sounds like you guys understand and you're even able to make puns out of it, so that's good. Because a lot of people take a while to kind of understand what MASH is about, and that's completely fine. You can always ask me questions here on WhatsApp, as usual. Yeah, so I'm glad most of you guys understand it. Okay, so this is just like last time. This includes some of the meta-analysis as well, so we'll come back to this when we jump onto meta-analysis part, but the key part that I want you guys to look at, so we just recap of the research question example that we have, and then we hop over to our search strategy, right? So we're looking at type 2 diabetes, dietary interventions, diet therapy, nutritional therapy, glycemic control, HbA1c, clinical trial, randomized control trial. So a lot of keywords here. And I think Saksham has kindly looked for the MASH terms for us. So it's very easy. You type type 2 diabetes into the MASH bar as we saw just now. Click add to search builder and you will get the MASH terms here. So if you just do that for each of these keywords, you're going to get these MASH terms. Yeah? So pretty straightforward. So your final query search box looks very scary at first, but when you look at it in detail one by one, it's actually not that scary. So we're looking at diabetes type 2 in MASH, so we write that in. And I think he wants to be safe here. So I think some of you guys asked just now, what if MASH missed an article that I'm looking for? So you can do this MASH term, so every article that's already tagged with this, or you can write your usual type 2 diabetes. So this is if you really want to cover all of your bases. Or, and then diabetes mellitus non-insulin dependent. Again, this is if you want to just cover everything, cover your bases. And these are all the synonyms, possible synonyms. And you want to look at the diet because that's our search question. And this was the MASH term. Or diet carbohydrate restricted MASH, again another MASH term. Or nutritional sciences, or glycemic index, or dietary interventions. So this is again covering like what you guys very, very astutely asked just now. What if MASH doesn't cover what I'm looking for? Then you just write it out anyway with your OR Boolean operation. So this is another synonym. So we've already have our diabetes and the diets, and so we wanted to search with hemoglobin. So we look for the hemoglobin A glycosylated in MASH, or HbA1c. And that's another term because that was the parameter that we're looking at, HbA1c levels. And our clinical trial. So this is the MASH term. And then randomized control trial, the MASH term again. And then you put your normal thing without the MASH term in case MASH terms made a MASH take. Okay. So it looks scary, but when you break it down, it's actually not that scary. MASH terms for diabetes and normal, diet for the MASH terms and the normal ones, so MASH, 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 and then your normal ones here, dietary interventions or diet therapy or nutritional, and your hemoglobin for MASH, without MASH, and clinical trials, randomized control trials with MASH, and then without MASH. Right, so I hope that breaks it down for you. So that's basically all about search strategy. So now you guys are going to look very smart when you put this into your search box. Yeah, and I hope that by the end of this you know how it works. Looks very complicated, but it's actually really simple. Writing down the keywords, looking for the MASH terms and then putting it all together at the very end to answer your research question. Okay, so I think it's been about an hour since we started. I am going to take a screenshot of everyone's names that are here for the attendance as well, just to make sure I don't miss anyone out. Okay, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, please pop it in the chat. Okay. Right. So I thank you everyone for coming today, and I hope I explained MASH terms well to you guys. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be staying here for about 5 more minutes before I leave. So just pop it in the chat.